Okay, before I start off, I have some tips for those who want to become researcher. Yeah, for interested master students or PhD students. Yeah, but what I would say you should do is try to develop a brand name. Uh, don't do too many things at the same time. Try to specialize. Try to whatever you do. Say I am a specialist in the retail industry of Hokkaido, or I'm a specialist in exporting service firms, or whatever you do. But if then there is a question in this area that people think, oh, I know someone, and that is his or her specialty. Yeah. Another tip for young researchers is is about the field. You can enter a field which exists, or you can enter a field which you try to develop together with your supervisor. Yeah. And that's two ways of building a career. I would say if you're young, try to work on a new field, because in existing field you have immense competition of lots of people who already know a lot. And if you develop a new field, okay, you don't have this competition. And as we all know, no matter how clever you are, you cannot compete with the entire world, of course. Yeah. Another tip for young researchers is don't do things on your own. Work with experienced other people. Sit next to them and try to emulate, try to do what they do, and then later you develop your own way of working. But first, see how when a senior person does it. If you send your text to a journal, don't aim too high. Don't aim too high. Just go to the motions. Just try to learn how a journal thinks, how referee thinks, how you move from one version to the next version, and then later you aim for higher journals. The likelihood that your first paper will be the best ever is very low. Yeah, and then new fields and brand name help shape your own future. If you enter an existing field, well, you work on your own career, but the field is already there. And if you enter a new field, you create it, you help create it, and then it's also easier to have a brand name there. So yeah, I've been very lucky. When I started my research, it was 35 years ago, and then nobody knew anything about entrepreneurship. I happened to stumble into it, and I helped develop a new field. And luckily, I never made the mistake of moving out of the field. I stayed in it. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So let's talk a bit about. Let me now see whether. Oh yeah. Let's talk a bit about. I have to. Oh yeah. Let's talk a bit about the journal where you send your paper to. Yeah. And this is also relevant for those who write a thesis, whether it be bachelor or PhD. It is a bit irrelevant. It's also important that you are aware what are the current debates in the journal. Yeah, what does the journal think is relevant? There are hundreds and thousands of journals in the world. Yeah, they all have a certain niche, and your paper should connect to this niche. So you have to know what the journal is all about, and information about the journal is often very well represented on their website. Yeah, what are the objectives of the journal? Does the journal want qualitative work or quantitative work? Do they want economics or management or theory or not? I mean, if you leaf through the website of a couple of journals, it becomes clear in no time what is the best journal for your text. You know, another important thing is that you have to give the impression that your text is written for the journal. Sometimes you send a paper to a journal and it's being rejected. For whatever reason, they don't want it. And then you're inclined to send it to another journal. But journals have their own way of writing, their own way of numbering chapters, their own way of doing tables, etc. And if you send text to one journal in the format of another journal, you better not do it, because then they know or they think that it has already been rejected by another journal. So these are two very obvious things, which I must admit, sometimes also forget after 200-300 papers and after 30 years in the business. Sometimes I forget it too, but these are essential. Yeah, what do I do? Okay, yeah. Then the next thing is have a clear focus, message, contribution, title. Do one thing at the time. Don't do several things at the time. Well, I just gave this example of what did I do? Retail firms in Hokkaido. I say something. So then you want to study what is the determinants of the growth of supermarkets in Hokkaido. That's very precise. And don't do several things at the same time. What's the determinants of their growth? What is growth? What are the consequences of their growth? We talk about supermarkets, but let's talk about pharmacies at the same time. No, try to be very precise. Because in the end of the day, there is the view of the editor, and the editor will be more likely to accept your paper if he or she thinks that it will get cited later, so that other journals refer to it, because citation is very important for the importance of the journal. So there should be one killer sentence. Yeah, it should become clear that if anybody writes about supermarkets in Hokkaido, they have to cite you, because otherwise they don't know the literature. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So another thing is, don't reinvent the wheel. So you want to write about the growth rates of retail of supermarkets in Hokkaido. Okay, and then you want to use some model. Yeah. Okay, then you can do two things. You can create a new model, or you can use an existing model. Yeah, and of course for growth rates, there's many existing models. So if you want to say no, I propose a new model, you have to make a clear case why existing models are not relevant, and why you set up a new model. Yeah. Okay. What a lot of people do is they write the text, they do some analyses, and they send in, let's say, some sloppy work in progress version. That is what a lot of Americans do. And then they hope that the referees then point at them the flaws and the typos, and don't do this. Send in the best possible version, because otherwise these days it gets rejected straight away. Yeah. Okay. What is very important: create space for not just for what is the scientific contribution. For instance, there is a firm growth model. It never has been applied to Japanese supermarkets. It has never been applied to supermarkets in Hokkaido. So you have a scientific contribution, but there's also a societal or managerial contribution. If you talk about the causes of growth of supermarkets, well, that's very interesting for the managers and the owners of the supermarkets to know. So space should be devoted to what is the implication, not just for scientific work, but also for the real managers. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Integrity is very important. Very important. Scholarly work is all about making choices. This is very important. Very important. Scholarly work is not about retelling reality. Yeah? You make choices. You make some sort of view, some sort of cut of reality, and in that you make choices. Yeah? Okay, you're going to study supermarkets in Hokkaido, given a certain model. Yeah, and you do it given that model, and that is a choice you make, and you have to justify why you make this choice, and you have to show, well, I know that there's 5 types of growth models, and I choose type number 2 because the others have the following flaws, given what I want to do in supermarkets in Hokkaido, in Japan. The same is for your research method, not just for the model you use. You can say, well, I do quantitative research. I use a certain model, and given that model, I go out and do a questionnaire for 500 supermarkets in Hokkaido. Yeah. Avoid obvious weak methods. If you do quantitative research and you end up not with 500 but with 23 observations, that's a bit weak, and then you would rather do a quantitative setup. Yeah. Yeah. Integrity. Okay, you've heard about the threesome phenomenon variable measurement. Yeah. Okay. So a phenomenon would be for the I keep to the supermarket uh, example. A phenomenon will be, are they successful? Yes or no? Yeah. Okay. And then that's a phenomenon, success. Yeah. And then the question is, what variable do you use? And then you can say, well, for success, my variable is profit. Yeah. And then the third question is, how do I measure it? Well, then you say, I use the yearly profits of 2022. So from success, you go to a certain variable profits, to a measurement in, let's say, yen in 2002. Yeah. Another aspect is that there can be interaction between all kinds of variables. Profits can be influenced by the size of the firm, the size of the square meters of floor space, for instance. Yeah, but okay, there can be a direct effect. But whether this floor space is in the city center or in a rural area makes some difference. A square meter in the city center will give more turnover than a square meter in a rural area. And then you enter the area of moderation, mediation, controls, multiplicative, additive, interactive, etc., etc., etc. I won't go into this. I'll give you the slides. And in the later phase, you can type this in, and then it's easy for you to see what the moderating effect is, and what the mediating effect is, and what the controlling effect is, etc. Yeah, but often variables, they interact. Yeah. And then there's a part of integrity is also omitted variables. Yeah. There's always something which you do not have. For instance, in the case of the supermarkets in Hokkaido, you want to explain their profits, but you don't have their assortment. Yeah. For instance, if you sell meat, then you can sell more. You can do more turnover per square meter than, for instance, when you do vegetables or something like that. Yeah. If you don't have the assortment composition, that is then an omitted variable, and you have to talk about it, saying, well, these are my results, but they are conditional upon the fact that they do not have assortment composition. Yeah, what is very important is you have your model, you have certain ideas about what explains turnover, but you should also say, well, what's my ideal model? My ideal model is that I have all these phenomena, and that then explains the turnover. Unfortunately, I have a questionnaire, and with only 10 different phenomena, and not the 40 I would ideally have. So the discrepancy between what is ideal in your head and what you do should also be very well documented. And then lastly, I mean, you can do all kinds of statistical tricks with the data to show that your model works, yes or no. That's one way to do it. But you can also say, well, I do not do one data set, but I do 4 different data sets. And that often gives more power to what you want to say than doing all the statistical tricks for one data set. So simple statistical things with 5 data sets is often better than high level of sophistication using one data set. Yeah. And then I go on with integrity. Often you have tables. Yeah. Make the tables self-explanatory. Yeah. Don't use headings like statistical results. Say precisely what can be read in the table. Because believe me, a lot of people just read the abstract, leaf through the tables, and then start to use your research. Very few people read your article from the beginning to the end. Yeah. What else do I want to? Yeah. Oh yeah. Have a clear listing of your objectives of the scientific text. Yeah. I want to test whether floor space has an influence on turnover. Yeah, that is the example I just gave. So you may have an hypothesis on that. More floor space, more turnover. Yeah, so that is your hypothesis to be tested. But there's another hypothesis that you don't test, given my example. There's also the influence of assortment composition. Yeah, meat gives more turnover per square meter than vegetables, for instance. Yeah, so say that I examine floor space, but I don't examine assortment competition. That is equivalent to saying I maintain that floor space in my model, in my setup, that floor space composition has no influence. Yeah. Okay. And then, of course, the last is conclusions for further research. Of course, you have then your results. And then you have to say, well, indeed, we found that more floor space, more turnover. But the next research should really concentrate on assortment competition, because as we all know, etc., etc. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. So precise mention of the limitation. That's very important what you do. Huh? So in our example, we only look at Hokkaido. We only look at supermarkets. We only look at turnover, and all the other things we don't look at. Yeah. Okay, there's 5 theories for explaining turnover in Hokkaido, and you use theory number 2. Yeah, you have good reasons to do so, and you apply it. And given that theory, you have some sort of model. Let's say a mathematical equation, very simple, linear, whatever, and then you do your data analysis. But then you want to make sure that what you test is really this theory and not another one. So you can corroborate your theory, you can show with the data, oh, the theory works. But you should use your same data to show that other theories do not work or work as well. Yeah. So the alternative theories should be dealt with, as I wrote here. So it means 2 things. You should be aware that there are alternative theories, but you should also show that they are less valid for explaining the hypothesis you want to research. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Every journal has a specific style. Follow it. Yeah. You have all kinds of chapters. Yeah. You have an introduction, and then you have theory, hypotheses. You talk about the data, etc., etc. Always start your section with a sentence explaining what you're going to do in the section or in the chapter. Yeah, announce it, and as a first sentence and as the last sentence, conclude it. No, I don't talk about the final conclusion, but about the conclusion per section or per chapter. And my last bullet point is, don't try to do too much in a paper. Think about also sending in supplementary material, appendices, footnotes, etc. Try to keep your paper, your text, whether you send it to a journal or whether you just send it to your boss, as small as possible, as concise as possible, and then point at, but I have other tables, I have other reasonings, I have other sources, and they are in the appendices or elsewhere, so that the main text stays very clear. Every article always starts with an abstract. Yeah, some 100, 200 words saying why is it important, what did they do, and what are the results in a very concise way. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, what's very important, be consistent on terminology. Yeah. So we are researching turnover in Japanese supermarkets. Then use the word turnover in the entire text. Don't change it to sales or performance or success or whatever. Once you use one term, stick to it. It's not a novel. It's not a book. I mean, where you want to avoid repetitions. No, repeat as much as you can. Once a variable or phenomenon has a name, don't change it. A scientific paper is a no novel. Write a text, type a text, and then go over it, and then take out all the parts which are repetitive. Yeah, I do so myself, and then often I type a page, and then when I really read it again, study my own page again, half the text I can delete, throw it out. Yeah. My mother tongue is not English. Yours is also not English. So I always have my language checked. It is good enough for everybody to understand, but it's not good enough for really English people to say that it is perfect. So I always have it checked, and there's various firms who do so at no cost and of hardly any cost, and it is ready in a matter of of days, and you learn a lot. Yeah, you learn a lot. In the beginning, you always have a problem statement in the introduction. Yeah, what are the determinants of uh, of turnover in Japan, and that's a statement in the introduction. Yeah, and you always have to refer to it in the conclusion. So you start your conclusion with, well, we started with the determinants of turnover, and these are our conclusions. What I do, others do it differently. I try to be very short and consistent and dry, etc. And then I have a text of, let's say, 10, 12 pages. And then in the last phase, I do what I show here on the low part of my slide. Then I try to make my paper attractive. Yeah, sexy or crispy, they call it. Just a couple of sentences to grab the attention of the reader, but only in the last phase and not in an early phase. First, I do something dry, concrete, non-repetitive, and then later I say, well, the supermarkets in Hokkaido are fascinating for the following reasons. They have had stellar growth, and now it's well, to make it somewhat more, yeah, juicy, attractive for readers. The introduction can be standardized. Yeah, the introduction consists of a couple of paragraphs, and they are standard. Yeah, the first paragraph is, what is the societal problem? Yeah, we want to know about turnover in Hokkaido. Yeah, okay. Then you have to convert it into a scientific version. Huh? So what growth models do explain turnover? Yeah, for instance. Then what do we know? Well, we know a lot about turnover in Osaka and Tokyo, etc. What is the gap, the missing element? Well, that is, we don't know about Hokkaido. Yeah. So what's a societal problem? What is the scientific form of it? What has already been done? What has not been done? And then you say, in the fifth paragraph, what are we going to do? Well, we are going to use a certain research question, a certain model, certain data, and then let's say, we run linear regressions. Yeah. The main result is that floor space, let's say, determines turnover, and then you say, how are we organize the paper? And at that point, you check all the paragraphs to see whether every word, every sentence per paragraph belongs to this paragraph. We have 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 paragraphs. Does it belong here, or does it belong elsewhere? Yeah. Every referee recognizes professional introductions like this one. Every word of the introduction should be the right word. If I write a paper myself, let's say a paper of 10 pages. Yeah, 1 page is the introduction, the rest is text, tables, whatever. I think I spent half my time on the introduction, and the other half on the other 9 pages. Yeah? It's that important to write a good introduction. Yeah, not just for the referees, that they see that you are a professional, but also for yourself. If you know exactly what you do, and that can be represented by the 7 paragraphs. If you know exactly what you do, then also your organization of the paper will be well, and it will be the chance that it will be well executed goes up. First page is also standard. Title, of course. Authors, of course. Affiliation, where you work. Abstract, 100, 200 words, not more. Then keywords. What are the keywords? Our keywords are then supermarkets, turnover, floor space, Hokkaido, growth model of Davidson. Yeah. Then the Journal of Economic Literature code. Check it out. That's a way of coding all the subfields of not just economics, but the entire world of the human sciences. Yeah, and then the acknowledgements. Yeah, the paper has been read before at several conferences. We acknowledge the help of certain people in drafting the paper, in collecting the data, etc., etc. Yeah. The conclusion of the paper: return to what you have been promised in the introduction. Yeah. Okay, give some perspective to the main result. So for us, there's a relation between floor space and turnover, but this depends on the assortment composition. It depends on where the square meter is located in cities, etc., etc. If you do research, you always find other things, yeah, which are not part of the research question. The so-called, by the way, yeah, I find other things. Don't ruin your paper with other conclusions. But you can set up a paragraph saying, well, while we did this, we also found that in city centers, there is a lot of attention for floor space dedicated to vegetables, whereas in rural, etc., etc. That was not part of your research question, but interesting nonetheless. Yeah. So making a separate paragraph in the conclusion for the by the way things. Yeah. I did research on A, but I found B, C, and D. Yeah. It's always good to talk about the limitations. We used model 2, but model 5 could have been used too, but further analyses showed that model 2 is superior. Yeah. What should others do? As scientific workers, recommended future research and the policy management implications. For instance, if then selling meat increases your floor space efficiency, well, okay, yeah, try to experiment with a butchery in your supermarket, for instance. Yeah. Also here paragraphs. Have these paragraphs. One paragraph is what did you promise? The second paragraph is what does the result mean? The by the way, the limitations, recommended future research and policy implications. These are 7 paragraphs. Yeah, a bit 6, bit comparable to the introduction. If referees recognize this organization in 6 paragraphs, they're very happy. Last remarks. Yeah. If you want to write a paper, present it as much as possible. Try to make a PowerPoint. Try to read it for others. Try to convince others to comment upon what you did. That you learn a lot. That teaches you a lot, and that makes your paper better. Yeah. Read your intro and abstract to outsiders. Do they understand what supermarkets are, what turnover is, what Hokkaido is, and let them explain to you what the weaknesses and the strong points are. What's the alternative hypothesis? Our hypothesis is more floor space gives more turnover. The alternative hypothesis is that floor space doesn't matter. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The causes, definition of consequences. For us, it's the definition of turnover must be clear. The definition of floor space must be clear. And then we are in the area of what are the consequences of floor space, or you can also say what are the causes of turnover. Yeah. Writing is part of a research process. A misunderstanding is you do your questionnaire, you have your data, you have a model, you have your literature, you do your calculations, you have a table, you write it, and then that's it. No, that it doesn't work like that. While you write, you come across the weaknesses of what you did. So writing is part of the research process. There's papers of which I had to write 20, 30 different versions before I had something of which I was a bit satisfied or even pride. While writing, you converge slowly to what you think might be perfect. I keep track of all the versions because sometimes I have to go back and say, well, I have now a new version, but what I did earlier wasn't so bad. I keep them all. Keep them all. I never start writing straight away. I first make a skeleton of paragraphs. I gave the 7 paragraphs of the introduction. I gave the 6 paragraphs of the conclusion. But also, if you do a literature research, first make paragraphs, and then you fill it in. My bottom line is sculpturing, sculpturing, sculpturing. Make it better, make it better, make it better. Improve it, improve it, improve it. You should never be satisfied with your text. Yeah, keep making it better, 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 better. Particularly if you work with several authors, the one author can have a go at the text, and then the next phase you give it to another author. And then it gets better, 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 better. Yeah, yeah. Very last remarks, and this is my last slide. Yeah, you can use a new theory or you can use an existing one. Yeah, I favor using existing theories and then apply it to, let's say, supermarkets in Hokkaido. Yeah, the chance that so far there's no theory yet developed which you can use is very low because time is long. There's many researchers, there's many publications. There should be a theory which you can use. Yeah. Okay, I talked about data versus statistical sophistication. There's 2 ways. You can say I have 5 data sets and then I have some tables and there's my proof. Or you can have one data set and you do all the statistical tricks. For me, the first is by far the better. I think I can detect whether someone is really interested in supermarkets in Hokkaido versus someone who says, well, I have to write this paper for my bachelor or my PhD, for my tenure, whatever. And so I have a data set and I do something. Genuine interest is one of the best causes of good papers. Yeah. Well, I talked a lot about integrity, how you go about data, etc. Yeah, and one way of integrity breach is strategic authorships. I have a paper, you have a paper, and then I invite you to become co-author, and you invite me to become co-author, and then we both have 2 papers. Yeah, okay. This is a way which has now been done often in the scientific world. Last week there was an article in Nature or Science, I don't know, one of these great journals, showing that there are scientists based in Thailand and Saudi Arabia who write 1 paper every 5 working days. Well, that is humanly not possible. So there's then an integrity breach here based upon what we call strategic authorships. Yeah, creating knowledge is not a lonely endeavor. Never do it alone. Work with others, with your supervisor, with other students, etc. That's more fun. And you have the internal refereeing process. You already look at each other's work, and it gets better and better and better and better. And lastly, I wish you all good luck writing your papers, either for journals or for your boss or for your colleagues or for whatever you do in life. Some organization in how you create knowledge is will make the collection of knowledge, the development of knowledge, and the dissipation of knowledge across others only better. I wish you good luck.